Great. We're going to start about talk today about Walt Disney Home Movies. Basically, that's the name of one of their brands, but we're going to go that we're using as the generic term for movies that were released by other companies on there. We'll see how much of this gets by Facebook because every now and then I cannot understand how, like the last time I did something about Disney Home Movies, I showed a clip from a film called Bear Trouble, which was bears running loose in Yellowstone National Park. Facebook came up and said, "Oh, blocked by copyright," so I had to take that out. If you go on Facebook and you put in bear trouble, there's got to be 12 other copies out there. So how it flags one and how it flags another. Somebody told me, because I was talking to a friend about it, he goes, "Yeah, look at the quality of all the other copies. Their filters probably gave up on it, and yours was so good it was able to get it." But how many people in the group have had Disney home movies, that you played on the projector in your house? No. Oh, okay, Brock. Okay, great. We had a projector, and my father would take it out. And it was always a big hassle. Take out the projector, take out the screen, put it up, do the whole thing. But we do movie nights from time to time, and we didn't have too many Disney movies because Disney, this will be a real surprise. Disney charged more for their movies than the other guys, so we tended to have Tom and Jerry cartoons or what was it? Howdy Doody, that sort of thing. But it was great fun. I'd like to read a quote here from somebody that talks about Disney movies. "My memories go back to when my dad would run black and white short films of Mickey Mouse on the wall of our New York apartment. The images filled the room. Dad was my best friend. One day, part of the film burned in the projector and it broke my heart. Dad spliced the film, but there was always a skip. I still watched it over and over." And that quote comes from Richard Sherman, who passed away a week ago
That's
today.
great.
Yeah,
All right.
so something else that we had in common, I guess. That was one of the things of the movies. They do break, they do get spliced, but they still go on. So just like before I start going into some of the videos, just go through some of the history of how this whole thing of Disney videos came to be. In 1923, the 16 millimeter format was invented. Up to that point in time, it had a 35 millimeter film, almost all of it on nitrate-based stock, which was very inflammable. And if you ever around nitrate today, it will burn like crazy. But in 1923, Kodak came up with the 16 millimeter system. That started the home movie business because most people, unless you were a Hollywood, type person or some super rich guy, you couldn't afford to have a 35 millimeter arc lit, projector in your house. But now all of a sudden in 1923, 16 millimeter made it possible. That's again possible if you happen to have money because it's you look at the prices for this stuff and it says, oh, the projector is only a reasonable $39.95. And then you realize how much people made in 1923. And they said basically it was for the average person, it'd be 2 to 3 solid weeks of working and doing nothing else. If you didn't pay your taxes, you might be able to buy a projector. Then you had to buy the film. And the film is, if anybody knows, if you deal with 16 millimeter, it's bulky. It takes up a lot of space. And it's not the sort of thing, many people would have in their New York apartment, big reels and reels of 16 millimeter film. But things changed for the big time in 1932 with the invention of something called Cine Kodak 8. And this is when Kodak came up with a brilliant idea that you could take a 16 millimeter film, which basically has sprocket holes on either side for stability. You put it into a camera, run it through, flip it over, run the other half of it through, send it to the developer, and with a knife, they split it down the middle, and now all of a sudden you have two 16 millimeter films. And this became a big thing because the quality of 16 millimeters is great, but if you have a cartridge on it and you only get 1.5 minutes of a roll of film, most people, every 1.5 minutes changing a 50-foot reel of film would drive you absolutely crazy. Now, all of a sudden, you got 3 minutes or so of it, and you were able then to drop the cost of your filming way, way down. So it became very, very popular, and all of a sudden, all sorts of people started buying film. It was also interesting, this was right around the time of the 1933 World's Fair came by, and Kodak started demonstrating and giving out free film to get people to buy stuff. So there had been, since Steamboat Willie first came out, there had been companies who were trying to get Walt to put out, his cartoons on 16 millimeter. He wasn't really interested. But I'd like to read you a sort of long quote from a magazine called International Photographer Magazine, and this is from the June 1932 issue. To a Hollywood corporation has been awarded the fattest contract in the history of narrow gauge film, the rights for the United States to reproduce in 16 millimeter and distribute Mickey Mouse and Silly Symphony cartoon comedies that have served their time on the major screen. Walt Disney Limited, producers as well as originators of these top-notch comedy entertainers, has closed a deal with Hollywood Film Enterprises, making effective just that. At the sunset plant of the Hollywood company, work is already well underway, getting out the comedies for the 16 millimeter trade. These will be in silent form. Whenever the Disney brothers, Walter and Roy, were approached with this in mind, they were not enthusiastic. The surmise is offered for what it may be worth that the change in heart of the Disneys may be ascribed to their recent conversion to the narrow films. Narrow here, he's talking about 16 as opposed to 35. It was but a short time ago that the two became ardent fans, purchasing cameras and projectors. It is believed that the actual experience in the making and projecting a 16 millimeter film so impressed the brothers it brought a realization of the potentials of the little film. So two big things happened. Walt and Roy both got their own 16 millimeter cameras. 8 millimeter gets invented, which opens up a whole wide market. And this company, Hollywood Film Enterprises, convinces Walt and Roy to let them distribute the films. Now, let me get some stuff ready here. Share screen. Okay, let's see. Boy, I got a lot of windows open today. We're going to go in here to this one. Okay. Hollywood Film Enterprises is an interesting company. They put out the catalog. They did all sorts of stuff. They did Western movies. They did all sorts of other comedies and that. But they had not been put into business to basically do home films. They were a lab, a commercial processing lab here in Hollywood that specialized in doing films that the major film developing labs did not want to do. They did a lot of educational films, training films, government films, that sort of thing. So they had a very modern plant with the latest equipment. They would turn out, reels and reels of, training films for the government. But they didn't have a lot of steady business because you can imagine if the producer comes in with his negative and he says, I need 1,000 copies made, nobody may come in the next day for 1,000 copies. So they had been approaching the film studios saying, hey, we could do these movies for you and we can do them pretty cheap. We'll do them in the times that we're not doing other films for other people. So as long as you're not in a super hurry, it may take us, instead of a day to do this, it may take us a week to do it, but we'll make you 1,000 copies of the Galloping Gaucho or Plane Crazy, that sort of thing. So this worked out really well. It became a great thing for Disney, became a great thing for Hollywood Film Enterprises, and quite a few of the other studios all went ahead and bought their version of home movies through Hollywood Enterprises. There were a couple different companies in the business at the time. They all competed. Sometimes people would move from one distributor to another. But this was basically found money for Disney. They would take a copy of the film, give it to Hollywood Film Enterprises, and they would make copies of it and send Disney a check. In this particular ad, one of the first ones they did, they're talking about silent cartoons, which was interesting because Mickey Mouse, of course, got known for doing sound, being sound. But if you look at some of the cartoons, and we're going to look at a couple of the Hollywood Film Enterprises, you'll see how they tried to go with actions that would not be required to have a sound on them. So here, catalog 302C. The first one, of course, was 301, Steamboat Willie, and then off they went. So they're doing 16 millimeter here, of course, in black and white. That's all that existed back then. And as their business grew, they put other people in there. Oswald Rabbit, they weren't getting that from Disney. They were getting that from the folks that took Oswald the Lucky Rabbit away. But Donald and Mickey, and they did a whole bunch. I'm not sure quite who did it with the three monkeys, but they had a whole bunch of cartoons about these three monkeys getting into various scrapes and odds and ends. So now this is great for Hollywood Film Enterprises. They have the images that they can use of Mickey and Donald and the other characters, and they started getting more and more titles coming out. This was the sort of box that they came out with. They had Mickey Mouse cine art films. They ran into what they had several businesses they used for legal purposes. They had cine art films. Later years, they had Carmel Hollywood Enterprises. But this is the box that your films would come in. When I was working for Disney, I would talk to Dave Smith, the archivist, and people would always be asking him how much these films were worth, and he would say nothing, because they're all out on video, they're all out on TV and full uncut versions and color and all that. But you might want to collect the box, and I think it's a pretty cool little box there. In one of their ads, they mention that if it's not in their trademarked blue, red, and black box, it's not for them. These films came on metal reels. They were, and sometimes you can help date if your films are from the 20s, 30s, or 40s, because they used metal reels, silvery looking ones, but also some were black reels. But here's a typical 8mm reel that they would put out. And they went off and changed their boxes over the years. So in this particular case, we got into the 1940s, and they had boxes for Enjoy Hollywood films, which was kind of making you think about their other films, but Walt Disney was the big name. So they put out two versions of the boxes. They had a Mickey and a Donald version. And then they got into the later years. This box came out in the 50s and was used into the 60s. So in this particular one, it becomes a generic box, Mickey, Donald, Pluto on the top. Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse and many other cartoons. Down at the bottom, you can tell that we've gone into the 50s here because they're telling you that this is not to be used on television. This is an unused box, and here's another version. I'm going to call your attention down way to the bottom if you can read. Any trade or use of this film outside the US and Canada will constitute an infringement. And this was really interesting. The reason I have an unused box, and the reason I have a whole bunch of Hollywood Film Enterprise boxes, is that during the 1960s, a Disney executive was down in South America, and he found some Disney cartoons down there that he wasn't expecting to see. And we'll get back to that in a few minutes. So now Disney comes by and they decide we can do these films ourselves and put them out. We don't need Hollywood Film Enterprises. So there's a quote here from a fellow that was in charge of the marketing division of the Disney 8mm business. And he said in 1968, it was decided that Walt Disney Productions would form their own 8mm division, said Rand Christensen, marketing supervisor for Walt Disney 8mm division, in a 1975 interview with animation historian John Cawley. The reason was simple. If you look at our company as a whole, you'll see that we have found that if somebody else could do it, many times we could do it just as well, if not better. Well, in this particular case, yeah, that's true. They wanted to do it, but they found those Spanish films down in South America. Now, it's interesting to try to figure out exactly what happened and when it happened, and in the sequence. If you go to the official Disney pages and you ask about on the D23 part of their site and ask about Hollywood Film Enterprises, it says that they lasted until 1950. And I'll show you later that's not true. Exactly how and when it ended became a real bitter battle between the companies, because now Disney told the executive down on vacation, bring back copies of some of those films. And they looked like the regular boxes, and because at first they thought maybe somebody just bought a bunch of the Hollywood Film Enterprises stuff in the States, brought it down to South America and was selling it at their store down there. But the guy said, no, the boxes are in Spanish. Well, that got their attention. So he picked up about half a dozen copies of the films. They brought them back. And Disney, of course, promptly and legitimately sued the pants off of Hollywood Film Enterprises for bootlegging their films and doing this down in South America. So although Hollywood Film Enterprises had a pretty much ironclad, never-ending, apparently, contract, they got out of the business, and it helped be the end of their business in a large extent, because the other studios saw that hey, if they're bootlegging Disney stuff, they may be bootlegging mine. And if Disney can do it on their own, I could probably do it on their own. So in 1968, they launched Disney Home Movies. It was a division of what was called Wademco, the Walt Disney Educational Media Company. It was a small office in Glendale. And I think they only had about a dozen people working there. But back in the 50s, they were going ahead and putting out a number of different odds and ends. But at this point in time, we're still mostly in 8 millimeter film. Well, Kodak had come by and realized that 8 millimeter was great, but the image size was limited because of the sprocket holes that were used in the film. They came up with what's called Super 8, which uses much smaller sprocket holes, makes a much wider film image, but it also gave an extra space on the side of the film that you could put a magnetic strip. That magnetic strip meant you could put sound on it. So Super 8 was launched in 1965, and it became a super game changer. All of a sudden, because you can imagine by now, people are used to seeing television, getting all this sort of stuff and everything, and now that they want to go off and watch something. But if they get clock cleaners in this 1960s version, it's in this is Super 8 in color, because for a while they've been doing everything in black and white. Now they came up with Super 8 color, and then they came up with Super 8 sound. So for quite a while, Disney was putting out multiple versions of things, because as Super 8 was launched, and you were the first guy in your block to get it, that was great. But what about all the people that still had 8 millimeter projectors that were not going to buy a Super 8? So their catalog, if you looked at it, would tell you how they had 8 millimeter, 8 millimeter color, 8 millimeter super. It was all over the place. It was a real hodgepodge of stuff. But during this point in time, Hollywood Film Enterprises in the 50s was still releasing stuff besides the Disney cartoons. They now got into being the official film distributor of Walt Disney Productions. They started distributing the films from the theme parks. So again, this is where the Disney D23 site says it ends in 1950. Nope, Disneyland wasn't there in 50, but they put out these versions of films. So at first they came up with special boxes for each of the lands. Then they came up with a more generic box that they would just fill in the little square there. But I've shown a number of these on the past shows. Go back to their shorts for a while. As I mentioned, they had the right to use the Disney characters. So we have laugh films in 8 and 16 millimeter, and you can go off and on the left here a bunch of Disney ones, on the right some of the other studios. And they kept putting the images in the ads. And so here we can see, I don't know what this particular one, 1943. So this is a flyer for 1943. You get Donald's Ice Capers, Donald's Fast Finish. And you go, wait a second, Donald's Ice Capers, what movie was that? And this is where it becomes really interesting with people getting confused about things. When they got the rights to the cartoons, they did several different versions of it. And again, cost was a real issue. So if the average person couldn't afford a whole reel of 16 millimeter film, maybe they could afford a whole reel of 8 millimeter film, but maybe they could really, really afford a smaller reel of the cartoons. So Hollywood Film Enterprises would take a 6-minute Disney cartoon, and they might make 4 different versions out of it with 4 different titles, different segments of it. And that became really interesting. I'm going to show you the list of just how many of these things there were at the time. But when I was in the archives, and I was talking to Dave, one day he said, "Oh God, not another one of these letters." And I said, "What is it?" He goes, "Somebody that just discovered a rare, never known Mickey Mouse cartoon." And that would cause great confusion, because people would get one of these Hollywood Film Enterprise films with a title that didn't match anything, particularly when they got the Leonard Maltin book, the Disney films, and they would try to look up anything about Donald's Ice Capers, and there's no such film. Well, even recently, if you go and you look on Reddit, if you're online, there was a fellow a couple of years ago that came up with a lost Disney Mickey Mouse film that he had uncovered that he thought was worth a fortune, because it didn't appear in any list of any Disney films anywhere. And he was really speculating about how this was going to make him really wealthy. Well, what he had was a cut down version of Mickey's steeplechase, and he posted images from it, and I probably shouldn't share this, and this will be worth a fortune. And people said no. So lots of people still send letters in, and I've got this rare film. It's not so rare, but here's a list of some of the films. I can zoom in on this a little bit. So you can see that they released things on all sorts of different sizes. You had 8mm films or 16mm films. So if you wanted to get Farmyard Follies, did you want to get the 8mm version or the 16mm version? Then down, some of the films only came in 16, so Cavalier Mickey. Some films only came in 8mm, Mickey's Cuties. They went all over the place with the different titles. I'll show you another list in a moment, gives you an idea of just how many of these things came out. But you can see this was really great. Disney cartoons, you can get them here now in 8mm, 25 foot, which again, this will run about a minute and a half. Amazingly, at some point in time, they offered 16mm films in 10-foot sections, and 10-foot sections would give you about a minute of 16mm film. So to me, it had to be a really good minute if you would take all the time and effort to take out the projector, load it, thread it, have to adjust your loops, get everything done, play it, and a minute later it's all over and all done. But they had a whole variety of things, and again, these titles, some of them you can figure out exactly what they are, and others, good luck. There's just no easy way. They also put these things out with different titles on the films over the years. So this is one of their very first ones they put out, Mickey's Stinging Finish. This is a 16mm version. You can see it's got sprocket holes on both sides. You can also see the word safe over there, letting people know it's safety film. It's not nitrate. It's not going to explode and burn up in your house. A year later, they had a different title, Hollywood Film Enterprises, Inc., Cowboy Mickey. Didn't even mention the name Disney here. So, and this became interesting because in their lawsuit, their whole battle, Disney didn't even know how many films Hollywood Film Enterprises had put out and what films they were taken from. And to this day, the records have never been fully reconstructed, which I'll go into in a few minutes. And another one here, Mickey and List. So they had all sorts of different titles in here. They also, before we get into the videos, they did some other business with Disney. You could go and buy a whole set of color slides from Disney films. They did quite a few of them. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, you could get a whole set of 10 of them. And they had a little list here of what was going on in each film to help tell you the story. And they slides here, the front side, the other side, again, like a lot of the commercial films of the day, have faded a bit to red. But they would say here in 1947, you could get, this is a article that came out about Hollywood Film Enterprises. They had a whole bunch of them, 3 Caballeros, Snow White, 3 Little Pigs, and they were pretty good, only $1.95 a set. These do not turn up very often. They do command a nice price. And they did use different film stocks at time, and some of the ones, particularly the ones I've seen from the 3 Caballeros, have held their color very, very well. So they're very nice Disney collectibles. So Disney then decides we're going to start getting out of just the home business. Remember, the folks at Hollywood Film Enterprises had a business to go here for the home market. Well, then Disney started saying, what about the educational market? And this became a big business for them for a while. Wademco was a big part of Disney, and it was all basically found money because the movies were already shot for the theatrical market. In many cases, they just took the 35mm film, shrunk it down to 16mm, and put it out on film for the educational market. These were priced fairly high. You as a private citizen probably would not want to buy your own copy of Treasure Island for several $100s, but if you did, you could go up and buy it. A lot of places got into renting them out for schools, or you could rent them for your kid's birthday party and bring them home. So they had quite a few things going on. The success of their 16mm business showed that they could get off into the 8mm business as well. So a later catalog from 1976. This catalog here is from Hollywood Film Enterprises and Disney stuff combined together. They took a lot of the stuff that Hollywood Film Enterprises has been doing, and now they put out the Disney versions of it. So you can see up at the left here, Monster from the Sea, an extract from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. We'll see that in a little while. And now you had the Disney short films. And down below, you say, okay, also available one or more individual films in each section of the park. And down below, short versions available in Super 8 and Standard 8, running time approximately 4 minutes, color only for the Disneyland films. Disney was also really, really smart. In every little box you got of your 8mm film, you got this little flyer, which varied over time, showing what the current titles were that were available. So you would have the Disney's Wonderful World of Cartoons, the True Life films, a whole variety of them. Most of these came in black and white and color, except you can see down below, like Wildlife and Grand Canyon's color only. And now, wow, we're starting to get into sound films. So you can get Bambi, Falls in Love, which we'll see today, but we're going to see it's the silent version. And then they, like, so this was really neat. And again, a lot of the people would get these, they throw them away, but sometimes people would keep them in a box. And you can start tracing the pattern of what was available and what timelines things came out. Super 8 again became a big thing, and when that hit the market, Disney went all out. They now, for the first time, could take all sorts of films that were not really sellable in the whole silent movie business, and their top film in the whole sound catalog became Whistle While You Work from Snow White. And I guess people just wanted to see that over and over, but they marveled on how many copies they sold of just an extract. You have to remember, at this point in time, Disney was still basically taking their theatrical films every 7 years and releasing them. They were not about to take out a copy of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the whole version, and put it out and kill that market. So they put out extracts, and they would do 2 or 3 different extracts from a film. They did make an exception overseas. If you were in England, there's a company called Duran, Derann. And Disney, for some reason, let them put out full-length versions of films on Super 8. And Duran really, they turned out some very high product. A lot of the Disney films, and we're going to see examples of it, have changed color over the years. Duran used a very stable film stock. They put out very nice caliber movies. Now, a full version of something like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs would be so big you couldn't run it on one Super 8 reel. So they would put out a box set of 3, 4, sometimes 5 reels of film, and you could get the whole movies. Duran, with the whole Super 8 business basically collapsed when home video came out, to no surprise. But Duran was still making and releasing Disney movies on Super 8 into the, I think, about 2008 range. And Duran Films, if you go online, they command a super premium. There's a huge market of people that, even though you can get Snow White now in 4K, video and Dolby surround sound and all the rest of it, there's a pretty good market of people that still like to take out their projectors, set them up in their living room, and be 14 years old again. So again, another version of the catalog from Super 8 Home Movies. They kept putting them out over the years. They kept selling them, and the titles, they just went on and on. They were still going in the days of the 70s and 80s. So the Black Hole came out, and you could get your version of the Black Hole, again, a cut down version on film. You could get full-length cartoons. So Mickey's Trailer, I don't know how many, I've got that one memorized from seeing it a million times in the Fantasyland Theater, but you could now take these things home and show them there. Full-length color sound. And these are just, I have pretty much, I think, all their catalogs buried in the file cabinet in the back of the garage. One day I'm going to get them out and scan them and put them online. But it is really interesting to see how much they, how many they did. They also decided to get into the whole educational film market, again, with 16mm. This became a very big line for Disney for putting out extracts of films, but they also made a lot of custom-made films. So you'll have the costume characters from the theme parks will go visit a fire station and teach kids what the firemen do, and they'll go visit a police station, they'll go visit a hospital. Then they did a whole series of films on economics and the laws of supply and demand. But what do you do about school bullying or the dangers of drugs? I mean, the Wiedemco catalog went on and on and on. It was a very big business. Just a couple random pictures here before we get into the videos. Again, Zorro came out on television in the 50s. They were not about to put it out on film and hurt their market. The 60s comes by, and that it's being syndicated in the theaters, not in the theater, and syndicated in television. So again, but now the 1980s come, and they think, well, Zorro is kind of passe, but we can put him out on Super 8 black and white. And this was perfect because it was a black and white show, but they put it out without sound. So again, there's all sorts of different versions of these things that come out. They also decided that they would take their market and start, if you didn't want to just get boat builders, and because again, who wants to change the cartoon every 6 or 7 minutes when you've got a birthday party full of kids to entertain? So they started coming up with cartoons all put together. You get a whole reel of them. So this would run you about 24 minutes of cartoon fun. And then they actually started editing things together. They would take films, clips from different films, put them together, put some extra narration in. This one's kind of fun. You're talking about there are film chases in movies. They've been film chases for years, but there's never film chases like Disney film chases. And they start with, I think, Freaky Friday and go to some of the others. So again, they did, at this point, they were doing films from the theme parks of Disneyland and Disney World. They were doing cartoons left and right. They were doing educational material, and they started trying to expand their business by doing Disney's greatest chases, Disney's greatest dogs, Disney's greatest. They put out a whole variety. This was right near the very, very end of the Super 8 craze, and you know, they were doing everything they could to try to hang on to it. So that ends that. Let me stop sharing the screen here. And I will get ready to go over something else. So let's see, where was this? I got so many windows open here. 1 second. Here we go. So that's not what I wanted. Okay. Let me see if I can share this screen real quick. I'm going to move to something else. 1 second. Mentioned Hollywood Film Enterprises had put out a whole bunch of versions of things over the years, and Disney had lost track of what they had put out. Let me get back to my share screen window here. And here we go, share screen. Yeah, I don't need sound for this one. Let's see. Okay. This part is a flyer, so you're not all upside down. It is, but we'll go in, go work our way down. This is a flyer, again, put out by Hollywood Film Enterprises of their sound cartoons, and you could get them in, again, 16 millimeters. So you get a short version or the long version of this thing, and they were edited down. So obviously, if you get the 100-foot version, you're going to get the, you know, something else. But you know, again, different titles of things that we're familiar with. Mickey Gives a Party, okay. Gang is a buffet supper, dancing, swing music, you know, etc. But if I scroll up through this, there was just examples of what you could get, and now you could go through and order them. Some people have written in here what some of the titles were. So Donald's Buzzsaw Battle was taken from Dog Napper. Spanish Serenade from Don Donald. And we keep going down through here. We're going to get into an interesting document Disney had. I got this received October 28th, 1938. So this is the list of the Walt Disney subjects released by Hollywood Film Enterprises as of that point in time. And it goes on and on and on. So you had the 200-foot 16 millimeter versions. You had 100-foot versions. And again, they would point out here, this one, A10A, was released as The Haunted House and The Jazz Fool. Well, that was a double feature. They had two different things on there. So it was, sometimes they used The Haunted House, sometimes The Phantom House, sometimes Jazz Fool, sometimes Jazz Tune. You go, I think I'll just scroll down to the very bottom here. It's a lengthy list. It goes on and on and on. so again, they had their codes here. You get a 100-foot film or 50-foot film and 8 millimeter. So you might end up with a film 123A, but if that same number could be used for both 16 millimeter or 8 millimeter, and they go all the way down here to a Z, and they mention here lower numbers of them was drawn up to this point, except by Universal Camera Corporation. So that took me down another rabbit hole. Universal Camera Corporation had decided that they would make their own cameras to compete against the Kodak cameras, which were fairly expensive. And one of the things they were smart was, okay, if I can sell you a camera and I can sell it cheaper than Kodak, you'll look at it. But how about if I throw in a free Mickey Mouse cartoon or a free Donald Duck cartoon when you buy your camera? So they would have a package deal where you could buy the camera, and they would list that I think they had about a dozen titles. They didn't tell you what the titles were. They just said that they were funny laugh-a-minute films. And how would you like to buy these laugh-a-minute films for an extra $3 or so, and we'll put them in the box. So not only when you got your projector and your camera, you now could go and you had your movies set to show right away. So then this is if you folks are familiar with Mark Counselor, Mark is a longtime animator and a huge collector of shorts, not just Disney. But Mark started trying to put together a list of what all the Hollywood film enterprises were and what the titles were. In some cases, what year they came out with. So I got this from Mark, worked on that. But then I also came up with my own list. I don't think there's anything notes here. Oh, yeah, okay. The more lists of films. Hang on, I'm just scrolling through here. So different versions of it. Okay. So I came up with my own list, which I'm going to stop this screen share and share screen again. The trouble when you're going through multiple applications. I can hope you can see that okay. I started making a list that I could of every document I could find to try to find out what the Hollywood Film Enterprise name was, the original short it came from, and what the catalog number was. In some cases, it's pretty easy to figure out because they did use the same title. And others, they're just way off there. So Airplane Antics was based on The Male Pilot. Alkali Ike Mickey, which we'll see in just a moment, was from Two Gun Mickey. And then you can see that they came up with two different versions of All American Mickey, both taken from Touchdown Mickey, but one was their B format and one was the A format, again, for the length of these things. In some cases, we think we know a title. The Barnyard Dance is probably from The Barn Dance, but I don't have a copy of it and haven't found out for sure. In other cases, The Big Parade, I don't know what that would come from. I have no idea what Black Bottom Dance would be. But what I basically do is periodically look on eBay for anybody that's selling these and try to figure out, I'll know, for example, Arabs versus Mickey. It was out there, was sold from Mickey and Arabia, but I don't have the catalog number. So people will go and post the stuff for sale, and if the box is lucky enough, a lot of times the box flaps are missing because they've been open and shut so many times, they've just fallen off. But sometimes I can pick it up. But if I just scroll down through here, you can just see how many of these Hollywood Film Enterprise films there were. I mean, it just goes on and on. What makes it really interesting at times is that the Hollywood Film Enterprise would also change the name. They might have something like, if we see, I'll go back up here, it's got to be Mickey and something. Mickey in where? Okay. They may put out Mickey and Forward Pass from Touchdown Mickey, but they may also just put out a version called Forward Pass, because at times they would put out Forward Pass, people wouldn't buy it, they'd put the name Mickey on it, all of a sudden sales would go up. So at times we have multiple versions of these things.
Hollywood Film Enterprises still in business?
No, and that's
still in
very
business,
interesting you asked it. I was just about to get to that. So perfect timing. I'll be with you in just a second on that. So this is, again, the long list of these things, and I'm always looking for some of these on there. If anybody is a collector and they would like a copy of this list and would not be able to fill in any of the names, I'd be glad to send it to them. So I'll get ready for the films here. So Hollywood Film Enterprises and Disney have their battle, and they end up with this lawsuit, and Disney ends up pulling out of it. I was lucky one day. I was sitting there in the office, and I shared it with one of the paralegals, and they were cleaning out files of stuff that they didn't need anymore. And part of it was the quote evidence from the lawsuit. So they had about 3 dozen Hollywood Film Enterprise American versions and about half a dozen Spanish versions. So she said, "What should I do with this stuff?" Well, I suggested, let's walk across the street to the archives. Dave Smith would probably want this. So we walked over, and Dave said no. He wasn't interested in the home movie market at all. And he said, "Oh, the studio has the full copies of all these things. I've only got so much space. Why would I want to keep all these cut down versions?" And I said, "Well, how about the Spanish versions? You don't have these." And he goes, "They're bootlegs, and I only collect official Disney stuff, so I don't want it." So the paralegal said, "What do you want to do with it?" I said, "Well, I guess it will go home with me." So I'm looking at a box of 3 dozen English ones. I don't know where to put the Spanish ones. I've got to find them, but I probably have the only ones up in the United States of the Spanish ones. Now, HFE, Hollywood Film Enterprises, loses Disney, but they still have the other studios for a while, and they keep going on. But right around the same time that they lost to Disney, they get their business tanked so badly, they got bought out by a company called In-Flight Services Inc. And what In-Flight Services was a company that made movie projectors for movie theater for airplanes. So this was the point in time where when you got on a thing and it was making a big thing that American Airlines now had a movie on board. They weren't shown on video. It was all on a Super 8 film that was projected up there. And HFE came in to the business of cutting down, because again, they were very good at cutting films down. They would go through a Hollywood film, cut out anything with nudity, sex, violence, and anything like that, edit the soundtrack if necessary, and they would make a airline safe version of it and put it out on film. Became the major part of their business, doing this particular stuff for the airlines. Finally, as you can imagine, now all of a sudden they go to video on the airplanes, and In-Flight Services Inc. kind of imploded. Hollywood Film Enterprises also imploded, and they are no longer a functioning business in the state of California. So I'm going to share a screen, and I'm going to remember we're going to start with silent film, but I'm still going to optimize for sound, or because we're going to have something coming up. And this will give you an idea of a typical Hollywood Film Enterprise film. This one's not been cleaned, restored, or anything like that. So we're going to take a look here. There's our leader going through. And it says sale is conditioned. You can't show this for money. So I'm glad everybody realized that this is for free. But we're looking at Alkali Ike Mickey. And this was sort of typical of a film of the time. It's been rode hard, put away wet. You can see a bunch of damage as it went through the projector and everything off to the side. But they did like I said, 3-4 different versions out of this particular film. It would be interesting if I had every one version to see, I don't know if there was overlap, on particular versions of it or not. But this is what you would be showing on the wall of your New York apartment. Except Dick Sherman, of course, did it in 16 millimeter. Oh, again, I love a bunch of the old cartoons. Some of these sight gags, the giant cowboy and the little horse. Stuff today, of course, oh my God, Peg Leg Pete, we couldn't say Peg Leg. Mickey was crying over his loss of Minnie, and now he hears her yelling down below for help. And she falls into the hands of the villain, Billy Bletcher. You want to imitate his voice. But fear not, Minnie. She can fend for herself. Now, is Pete a tough guy or what? Fear not, Mickey to the rescue. Anybody know the name of his horse? Tanglefoot. Tanglefoot got the star in a couple things where he was the star of Mickey's Steeplechase. This is really great animation here, you know, for the time, so close to the camera. We're going to see in the next one some really interesting animation tricks they did.
Bill, did they subtitle any of them?
These they did not. Nope. And you had to just follow the story along, and we're going to see in some of the later ones they did, but these should put out as cheaply as possible, and they just came out. You know, you'd have to figure Mickey is saving Minnie, and you don't need to know why.
Did the animators draw these frames in black and white?
Oh yeah, these were all done in black and white, so you know there was no reason to be doing anything in color at this point in time. Now it's interesting. There's a guy who wrote a very interesting article about Hollywood Film Enterprises, down to the point of analyzing what stock it was done on. They evidently used film stock from both Kodak and also DuPont. And the guy was going on about how the DuPont stock is far better, gave out much better contrast, had different grain in it and stuff. And it's real interesting because this one does not have a ton of grain in it. The next one we're going to see, which come up in just a minute, had a lot of grain, which I digitally reduced, but it was to the point it was sort of annoying. So, but this guy went on and on trying to, you know, I'm trying to put together a list of, you know, which films were what. He's trying to figure out which film stocks were used. So good luck to him. So I'm going to go over here to, okay, where did I want to grab that one? 1 second here. So it was Alkali Ike, and now I want, oh, I know it. I needed to open another window, which I clearly did not do. I have so many windows open. Let me get yet one more. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna see another one here. Hang on, let me stop this 1 second. I gotta, okay, all the you don't see anything on top of it, right?
No.
This is one, it was kind of interesting. The Mystic Castle was taken from one called The Mad Doctor. And the Mad Doctor got so many complaints from parents about scaring the utter pants off their kids that for years Disney embargoed it and would not show it theatrically again. And you said, but you already put it out on 8mm. And he said, well, we can't take those back. But what would play in the 30s, by the 50s, they couldn't show it anymore. So Mystic Castle here, we'll go and watch this. This one is one I've done some digital cleanup, taking out some of the dirt and dust spots and everything. And they're telling you here, we can't operate this in any coin-operated machines. But this one, it's got some really neat animation coming up, which I'll get to in a second. But we start, and again, they put out, I think, 2 versions from this particular one. So Mickey's sound asleep in bed, and he hears a horrible noise outside. Pluto howling like mad. If I was Pinto Colvig, I could imitate all the howling noises, but he finally goes out to see what's going on, and the dog is gone. The chain's broken, the doghouse is off to its side. Oh my goodness. And look at that, convenient footsteps leading off the mysterious mansion.
Why didn't they consider putting subtitles in these silent films?
That costs money. And I guess also with some of the kids, maybe they couldn't read. Dr. XXX, by the way, became a big thing in Disney comic books in the 50s and 60s. They started bringing back Dr. XXX as a villain. So I thought that the first bit there, it's kind of neat. The staircase falls away as an example of a moving background. But we're going to get into a really good one inside. So Mickey goes in. There's a whole bunch of sequences in here that are missing. Basically, Dr. XXX is trying to see if he can cut the head off a chicken and a dog and transplant them onto each. Here, this is really great. This is a total moving background. So the background is animated and a lot of work because every frame of that background moving had to be done in addition to Mickey moving. The full-length cartoon has a very long sequence of Mickey going down those corridors. And you know, that you generally do not get moving backgrounds. It's like here, obviously, you know, the main part of the lab is not moving. If you had to animate every single frame of it, that becomes very labor intensive. Doesn't look good for Mickey. Our surgical prep.
This is probably scary for its time.
What's that?
This is probably a scary film for its time.
Yeah.
For kids to watch this.
In my case, in some of these cartoons, my dad would do his own sound effects to go along with them, and that was a part of the fun that went as well. So. So all's well that ends well in Mickeyville. And again, you have to promise you're not going to do this in any coin-operated machines. So they would put out different versions of the films. Again, hopefully in some cases you can, you know, make out the plot and why they didn't put subtitles in. Again, I understand it was a matter of cost, but we'll see if we can figure out the plot of this one. I have not edited this down to take off the scratches and stuff yet. I mean, the title. When I run it through the next phase, I'll be doing some sharpening of it and stuff like that. But this is it's a multi-step process, which I'll go through in a few minutes. But Lonesome Ghost is a great Disney cartoon. The ghosts are bored, so they decide to have some fun with the ghost Ajax Ghost Exterminators. Yeah, do we exterminate ghosts? Oh, yes, we do. Again, the edits of this are really well done because there was all sorts of scenes of the ghosts talking back and forth to Mickey, but now they're off to the house.
It's an early version of Ghostbusters.
Yes, it is. It became very popular again when Ghostbusters did come out. That they managed to start showing this one in places. Oh, I don't know why that popped up. Thank you, Microsoft. I've seen this thing so often that when the guy comes through here with a fife and everything, I can just, you know exactly the music in my head, what they're doing. Now, this version was put out by Disney, and it was interesting. This came in one of those generic boxes of, the yellow box, which just they print the title on it, Lonesome Ghost. Well, they put it out in black and white, but in later years they decided, okay, we can go off and put this out on a color version of it, and in later years a color sound version. So if you want to collect this stuff, you're going down a rabbit hole if you're trying to get all the versions of it. But when they put out the later versions, they actually did a very nice color box with artwork from Lonesome Ghost on the top, and they started doing that very much for all their modern versions of the films to get people to realize that this was something special. So those generic boxes ran through the 50s and 60s, but then in the 70s, as Super 8 came out, they started coming up with custom art boxes for some, but not all. In some cases, they had ones that didn't sell enough that I guess it wasn't worth it. They there's no 100% rhyme or reason to any of it. And off they run, and our heroes are safe and sound once again. Now, what's interesting is on some of these, the masters, the negatives, of course, were color, and they down printed them to black and white. And in some cases, they didn't adjust them too well for some of the differences in colors. So some came out murky, others came out pretty well. They also started going to live action films. So we're going to see this particular one. Again, you could not, at this point in time, during the 1960s, buy your own copy of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. They later started doing it in a, let me just move this up a bit, get away from the bottom. They started doing their own version of the 16 millimeter ones for the educational market, but they priced them so high that they were not worried about ruining their theatrical market. This was very, very grainy. There's still some of it as it goes through there, but again, some of these films, when they took the color versions and they printed them down just 8 millimeter black and white, they didn't go out of their way to adjust for things like color, contrast, that sort of thing. But if you were a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea fan, this was it. This was the one and only way. Excuse me, hiccups. One and only way that you could get to, enjoy this in between the 7-year theatrical cycle. This, of course, is the famous squid battle that Walt reshot at tremendous cost, because the first one was basically done in calm seas, and you could see all the wires of the squid tentacles. So he reshot this entire thing on the stage over several days to add the storm elements, and that helped hide a lot of the wires. It also gave it a much greater, sense of drama.
Is that Kirk Douglas?
That's Kirk Douglas, yep, and he's.
It looked like Ernest Borgnine was in there too.
Nope, he's not in this particular one. It's James Mason plays Captain Nemo right there. And it's funny, I can't remember sometimes where I put my car keys, but I can remember that Kirk Douglas was playing a character called Ned Land. It's funny the things the brain holds on to. And he frees Nemo. So in this one, they obviously put subtitles in because, I guess they figured you couldn't figure out that Nemo's rescued. It seems like that would be sort of obvious, but.
And they actually did underwater filming.
Yep, right on the stage, and a tank under the stage in Burbank. It's still there. And that same tank was used when Carol and I were working there for underwater scenes of a movie called The Last Flight of Noah's Ark. So it's still there. It's still usable. I don't know the last time it's been used for anything, but it is still usable. So then they started saying, okay, we can start taking a lot of these theatrical films. We're not going to put the whole thing out, but we could put out different excerpts from them. So let's take a look here. And again, they put this out in black and white, and they put it out in color, and then they put it out in color sounds. Well, that ends well. And let's see, what else do we have here that they then went into, I have a whole bunch of others. We could go here all day. I don't want to fill them up, take everybody's time too much, but let's go and grab something else here real quick. Okay. Nope, that's not the one I wanted. 1 second. Okay. Mentioned earlier about how they went into sound, and that became a big thing. So I just wanted to show you a film here, The Proud Horses of Austria. and this one should have sound in it. This is an extract that they did from a movie, Miracle of the White Stallions.
Before World War I, an excellent school of classical riding could be found in almost any court in Europe. Now, there is only one. Presenting the proud horses of Austria, the Lipizan stallions of Vienna's Spanish riding school. These horses are unique in all the world. The story of their history and training is extraordinary. It is not surprising that Walt Disney was attracted to the beauty and grace of these animals. He made a movie about them with Robert Taylor portraying the school's director, Colonel Louis Podolsky. Included in the film was this famous performance of the Lipizan stallions. Haute école is the name given to this refined technique of horsemanship. The rider must be subtle and inconspicuous in his commands. The desired effect is that the observer's attention should be drawn solely to the graceful movements of the horse. An example of the diligence in this training lies in the fact that it takes 2 years just to master this walk. From birth, the horses meet only with kindness. They don't even begin school until they're at least 3.5 years old. Now just think, a Kentucky thoroughbred might be retired by that age. The stallions are not ready for performance until they reach 8. And they may still be performing at age 25. Notice the proud arch of the neck. Though the academy is located in Vienna, it is referred to as the Spanish riding school, after the original breed of horses which came from Spain. In the school, one man is in charge of 4 horses, which he alone may ride. The rider must get to know and understand the horse, but the horse also must understand what is expected of him. The trainers make it a point to talk to the horses. No lover of animals would question this practice. As Colonel Podolsky put it, the horses are important then, and they know it. Only a few horses can master the difficult leaps from the so-called school above the ground. And of the few that perform these movements, no one horse does them all. Each horse masters just one leap. These exercises, by the way, are not stunts or tricks. The horses are not taught circus steps. The entire exhibition is an extension of the horse's natural development. Even the spectacular leaps are something the horses might do while playing in the pasture. All Lippitzoners are born with dark coats which turn to milk white sometime after 3 years of age. That is, they usually become whites. Fortunately, a black, bay, or cream-colored stallion occasionally appears. Why fortunate? Well, the people treasure these exceptions. There is a superstition which holds that Austria has fallen on bad times in the years when there wasn't a non-white in the school's troop. That's why they're always sure to include at least one of them among the show horses. The Lippitzoners have been presented in this hall since 1735, when it was constructed for Emperor Charles VI, a great patron of the art of riding. Since then, this beautiful Baroque building has been used for everything from Beethoven concerts to war games. The quadrille is the last remnant of the royal equestrian balls and carousels once held here. You can see that the school and animals are linked solidly with tradition, and that is important to every one of us. In the words of Colonel Podolsky, these are drab materialist times. Surely if we can let into them one beam of elegance, of splendor, of glory from the ancient classical world, that would be worth a man's life, no? When I am tired, I tell myself, yes, it would.
Oh, I
Well,
hope,
thank you, Bill.
I was just
thank
gonna
you.
say, I hope you enjoyed that one, Cody.
I just loved it. You know, they finally let a couple of women ride those horses.
Oh,
It's only
wow.
taken till since 17 something to have them do it, but they've done it.
Oh,
Thank you
great.
so much. I love that particular movie.
Yeah, it's a great film. For folks that haven't seen it, it's the whole thing about it's the end of World War II. The Nazis are fleeing Austria. They want to just shoot the horses to be rid of them. And it's actually interesting. Eddie Albert, you get used to him in Green Acres, and he's in a very different role as an army officer. James
Right.
Franciscus, Robert Taylor, Lily Palmer. It's a great movie, and I very, very much recommend it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful movie. They were talking about different color horses. During World War II, the Russians took a lot of those horses, and the Russians put them in with Arabian horses. So it kind of got dicey where the Lipizzans and the Arabians kind of got together. So probably those color horses came from the Arabians.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, just to
Arabian
show
horse.
I'm just going to show a little clip here of what it takes to bring some of these things back to life. So, as this title says here, a lot of the colors have been lost in these. The stuff that Disney used for their films in the 50s, 60s, the colors are really have gone. So, give you an example. Here's what it first looks like when you scan it. Pretty red. Now, this, of course, is a sound film. So what I had to do here was scan it on the scanner, which doesn't do sound. And I had to project it on a Super 8 sound projector, record the sound. I had to match them together. What's interesting is that they're, supposedly both 24 frames per second. Well, they don't quite match, two different machines, that sort of thing. So I think they ended up about 12 seconds apart in sound. So I had to go and adjust the film rate to match the sound and get it back. But again, this is the first phase of it. Comes in as that's the way it looks as it comes right out of the scanner. So the next program I run through something called AviSynth. It does a pretty good job of reducing the red down, bringing some of the other colors back. It also takes out a lot of the dirt digitally. and it stabilizes the film for up and down or left and right, vertical or horizontal jitter. There's not a lot of that in these theatrical films because, again, this is all shot with cameras on dollies and tripods and stuff. But for home movies, as mom or dad is out, moving the camera around, it makes a difference. It also makes a difference because, Disney shot this in 35 millimeter, very finely registered film. The average home movie had a certain amount of slop in it that you might say that would jitter around. So one more pass through, sharpening it a bit, taking out some other odds and ends, and trying to reduce the reds a bit. You can see it's a little redder on the one side, bluer on the other. It's just the way that the whole thing comes out. Somebody with $100,000 computer software package could do a lot better. This is just what I try to do on these things. So all the Disneyland movies, the Disney World movies, everything that they put out have all changed in color, almost all gone to red. And there's just one more quick example coming up for beginning and end of process sort of thing. So again, isn't the computer wonderful what you're able to do with it? A lot of these people I mentioned, earlier have clubs or things where people put together home movie nights, but they generally don't bring out the red versions. Well, actually, a lot of guys bring out the red versions of some of the horror movies because that's the only versions that still exist. But over in the UK with the Duran films, a lot of the guys go with the Super 8, Disney stuff that's been on that stock, which really lasts for a while. Disney was very proud that they had come up with film stock that was durable and could take the wear and tear on projectors, but they didn't take into account the color fading over. I guess who cared about 20 years from now? So does anybody want to see any more cartoons, or do we just want to wrap it up and chat?
Well, I was going to make a comment, Bill, that if you were to take that film that you just processed
Yeah.
with the slight blue on the right and the left, slight red on the left, and if you were to pass it through one more time, but reversed, meaning turn the film backwards, would then it cancel it out?
It might. It could. I hate to think how much work that would be. I cannot tell you how many hours I put into that one as it was, because of the amount of time. First of all, I physically clean them by hand. Then you've got to scan them. Then you've got to put them through the Avisynth process. That particular film took about 5 hours to do step one. Then I had to take the sound and run it again to record the sound, and I had to match it up. That probably has 12 to 14 hours worth of time invested in it. So after a while, you get to the close enough is good enough,
Well, actually, then let me rephrase that. It wouldn't be the film itself that you would feed through, because that's already. But the video, yeah, I wondered if you were to mirror that video, and run it through your processor, would somehow the processor see the difference in the color correction and correct it?
I can give it a try. I'll see what I can do about that. Let's
Just
do
curious.
one last sort of more modern cartoon to end, because who can go wrong with again, thinking of Richard Sherman a week ago, we'll go into Winnie the Pooh. And Winnie the Pooh in Technicolor in glorious black and white. I don't remember if they put subtitles on this or not. Let me shrink it down, move it up so they show better.
Yeah, Richard Sherman, I think, was 92 when he passed.
Wow. Yeah.
Ready, and we will present it to you at a future show.
Oh, that'd be great, Joey.
Thank you.
Oh, and there's the wink from Pooh. So is he alive or is he not alive? So we'll end on that, though. Like I said, there were
I just looked up what is a poo, and
What
it
is it?
was a swan actually that A. Milne found, and then he named Winnie in the poo. I don't know why, but
The poo was a swan.
it was a swan originally, And the bear is named after the swan.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure there's some logic in that. Let me just look at the
Let me
chat
see
here
what
real
it
quick.
says here.
Doesn't make sense, but okay.
It made sense to him.
Yeah, it was interesting here. Whoops, what did I click on there? I don't need that. Oh, that was just a film ending. Beth made mention that Lonesome Ghost is also sold with the little Fisher Price viewer. Yeah, one of the things they did was they had a little home movie viewer, and you could crank a thing and watch it. And Lonesome Ghost was one of them. Was one of Winnie the Pooh. There were a couple different ones that were done, and somebody
Yeah.
actually has one on YouTube where he goes and takes a camera and puts it through and hand cranks it and
Yeah.
and shows it.
Beside all these cartoons and films, did they also make Viewmaster reels?
They did for some of them, and generally they did two things. They did some of them where they took still images out of the film, but again, Viewmaster had to be 3D, and most of these things were all done in 1D. So what they actually did with a bunch of them was they made little figures of Disney characters, a little Mickey, a little Donald, a little ugly duckling or
Yeah.
whatever, and they would stage dioramas and shoot them in actual 3D as opposed to simulated 3D. So
Oh,
Yeah,
like
I love
claymation.
those. Yeah, those were great. How it was like a beautifully posed world that you were looking through, and it looked like you can walk right into it.
yeah, they were really done well, and the Disney worked with that they were actually not made by Disney. The characters, they were made by somebody for the Viewmaster, and Disney would supervise them and give them input on it. And I read just this past week that somebody has two of the figures. That most of them were just scrapped. They go from one project and move on. But somebody had said they had two of the figures, and if you went. I'm trying to remember where it was. And so supposedly they were on display recently in a show, and there may be others, but at least two of them were on display out there. But yeah, they were really, really well done.
Does
So
does
anybody remember any of these films from their childhood days? But nobody who goes
Yeah.
back and remembers Alkali Ike, right? Because we're not from the 1930s or whatever. But like I said, I can remember, just sitting there and my dad would be the sort of guy, as the bee was buzzing around, he'd be going buzz, buzz, and we'd all join in, and it was great fun. I mean, the things were. I can't even remember the last time I took out my 16 mm projector. I mean, because again, you take it out and you got to take the screen. And always did everybody else's screen always make a screeching noise as you take it out?
Yeah, mine did.
Yeah, it always like, yeah. And then after you haven't used it in 10 years, it's like ripples from being rolled up. And
Yeah, it's got ripples, or it's got a square stain that goes around it from being rolled up for too long.
yeah, but
Well, Bill, when I first started at Disney, we could rent the 16 mm films and a projector. As employees, you could rent them and take them home for the weekend, and get different films and cartoon reels and stuff like that you could watch at home. You were supposed to. I don't remember exactly what the rules were. You were not supposed to do. You couldn't do it where people paid money, but if your kid was having a birthday party, you could show the cartoons for the birthday party, stuff like that. And I know that when I was a kid, my dad worked for the Southern California Gas Company, and there was somebody at his base, because they worked out of bases. It was sort of like the military, I guess, but that had some connection with Disney. And whenever they'd have the Christmas party for that base, they'd invite all the families to come there. They ran 4 or 5 reels of Disney cartoons that he had picked up from Disney that they would show for the kids and for everybody to watch. So I know there was some ability to do that within the company.
yeah, there was. Appreciate you mentioning it. They had a program, as Brock mentioned. You didn't even have to rent it; they would loan it to you. They would loan you a 16 mm projector and a screen and a movie and 3 cartoons. And you put on a waiting list, because you can imagine there were about, I don't know how many people were, say 800 people working at the studio, and they had, I think, like 6 projectors. So you put your name on the list, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to start at Snow White. I'm going to go, work my way through. But then I realized the only gating factor in there was the projector. And you know, if I didn't have to wait for the projector, I could take home films. So I went and bought my own Bell and Howell 16 millimeter sound projector, and I felt like I was part of the AV squad at school, you know, taking this thing home. Weighs a ton. And then I also realized I could take a video camera and I could shine it at the screen, and I could keep my own copy of Snow White forever. The thing that was an interesting thing was that the average projector, I think it has 3 blades in it, and you had to get a modified 5-blade shutter so you can get the flicker so that the two of them would sync up. But yeah, I would sit in my apartment and I'd watch Snow White one night and you know, whatever the next night. But after a while, you got the same package. They had about 10 different reels of cartoons, 3 to a reel. So after a while, it's like you don't even need to give me the cartoons. No, you have to take the cartoons as a package. So I would take them home and watch them. I had a great fun with it. But that was actually led me to a very interesting situation where the warehouse for this at this point was across the street from the studio where the new animation building is now. And I went over there one day to pick up a roll of film. And again, this was all done by Woodemco, the educational media company. And the thing they did for the employees was just a bonus. And I went in and there were all these giant carts, you know, the sort of baskets you use in post office, fill them up with packages, you know, canvas bags. There were films everywhere, all over the place. And I said something like, wow, you guys must having a big day of, you know, all this stuff going out. And the guy said, no, this is what came back. And I said, what do you mean? How do so many films come back? Well, it was a very interesting situation. If you were a Woodemco salesperson, you got your bonus based on how many films you had sold to how many schools. Not how many that were sold and not returned. You were just based on how many were sold. So they would call up like, Brock, you're the principal of Thoman High School. You'd really like to see Winnie the Pooh, wouldn't you? No, I wouldn't. I'll send it to you for free. And if you like it, you know, just pay us for it. Well, they would send it back and the returns didn't count. The guy now got his commission. Well, that started me thinking that's not right. And so I also started pulling the records, and there were schools that every single year would say, yeah, send me the health and education series about bullies. And they would show it and they'd return it. So I ran the computer records and said, this school every single year gets this set of films and every single year returns it. And we're paying a commission to this guy every time this school returns these films. So we now instantly changed the program that your commission was based on net sales, not gross sales. And hi, Mr. School, you've returned so many films, you're no longer eligible for our free approval program. So the profitability on Woodemco films went up amazingly that year, for which I, of course, got 0. But you know, it was just one of those things that you're at the right spot. You know, like, why? I'm in this warehouse, just, you know, I mean, piled up 12 feet high with films all over the place. And you know, you keep thinking, you know, wow, this is some. The trouble is, there were so many films, even with your own projector, you can only watch so many of them. But it was a great thing. I mean, and that's where when I started getting into the television stuff, they didn't have a lot of copies of the extra television shows like Zorro, because there was you know, there was no market for it. They hadn't released them. So you could take home any of the theatrical films, but a lot of the TV stuff you couldn't. But then I met a guy named Rich who was an air conditioning mechanic for the studio. And Rich was very much a big fan of Southern Comfort. And I would basically say, Rich, we'd meet in the parking lot. And I felt like a dope dealer. He'd give me this, you know, canvas bag, and I'd put it in the trunk of my car, and I'd give him 2 bottles of Southern Comfort. And it was half a dozen reels of Zorro that I would have to go home, watch, and then return, and meet him 2 days later in the parking lot and give him back. Here's another bag. Here's another. I must have killed poor Rich's liver, because, you know, there's 78 episodes of Zorro alone, plus, you know, and then it's like, he'd be like, would you like to see some Mickey Mouse Club? You know, yeah, here, more Southern Comfort. So I faithfully returned everything there, and he faithfully put everything back. But man, I would go to the liquor store, and the guy says, man, you know, you got a problem? And I don't even like Southern Comfort. Just give me 4 more. You know? But yeah, I was able to watch an awful lot of stuff because of Rich and his Southern Comfort addiction. So hey, I saw Tom, you just joined us. You missed everything. We were talking crap about you, and you have to see it later on.
I'm sorry.
No, we
Better
weren't
late than
talking
never,
crap
Tom.
about
Better
you.
late than never.
Yeah, we'll again, I'll put this on YouTube. We'll see how much the YouTube bots go with it and whatever. But anyway, like I said, I love this stuff. My dad was really great showing us movies as a kid. I had many of the Super 8 movies over the film because when we worked for Disney, we got a 35% or whatever discount so you could buy everything. And these things were not cheap. I mean, a color version of some of these films could cost $30, $40, which in 1976 was, pretty good money at the time for something that lasted 6 minutes. So over the years, once video came out, I sold off all my Super 8 films, which now I'm trying to get back. If anybody does have any Disney Super 8 film or Disney films, 8 or Super 8, and you'd like them digitized, I will be glad to restore them for you for free, no charge. So if you do have any, and that goes for the people on this call, not anybody that might see this on YouTube. And for the next 20 years, I'll get 100 of these a week. But if anybody does have any of them, I'd be glad to take a whack at trying to bring them back to life for you.
Oh, thank you.
Next week,
Bill, I'll do it for a bottle of Southern Comfort.
I should charge for it. Yeah, it's trouble. I don't like Southern Comfort. Okay, I will do it for anybody for a root beer float. No, I tell you, we had a friend in England who also liked Southern Comfort, and I would bring, it was one of the things I'd be going over to England, and what was the legal limit of how much Southern Comfort I could bring in, and the guys in customs were looking and said, "This stuff is terrible." I said, "It's a gift." And then our staff in Japan loved it. So when I was going to Japan, same sort of thing. You go to Japan and they'd always be giving you some sort of gift, so you'd have to give them sort of gift. But it wasn't just the Southern Comfort. You'd have to get it all gift wrapped with a bow on it, and you had to present it very formally, and then they would give you something back. But yeah, I cannot think of how many bottles of Southern Comfort I have bought over the years, and I'm not a fan of it.
Janis Joplin, I saw her in concert. This was in the 60s. And after every song, she would lean over and pick up a bottle of Southern Comfort.
For me, it was probably the first alcoholic drink I ever had because I was working at Boy Scout camp, and the guys convinced me to go into a liquor store. The drinking age was 18, and I think I was 16. They convinced me to go to a liquor store because they had been thrown out so many times to get some Southern Comfort. So I remember Liberty, New York, going to the liquor store and asking the guy for some Southern Comfort. And he was like, "You're 18?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I don't think you are." And I go, "Look, if I don't bring this stuff back, they're going to beat the shit out of me." Oh, he goes, "Oh God," he gave it to me. So I got back to camp, tried it. I did not like it. So maybe it's that, but it's really funny. I can remember Liberty, New York. I remember right where the liquor store was because I was convinced I was going to go to prison. So
Yeah, it's ghastly. Yeah.
yeah. So next week's plan is something different. There was a woman on Facebook and a group of there's a couple groups dedicated to 8mm collectors, and she put up a thing that her dad had all these World War II newsreels about the Marines take Tarawa onto the fighting the Atlantic Wall. So he had about 5 of these, 5 or 6 or so in a box, and she wanted to give them away. Did anybody want them? And for postage. And I said, okay. And she goes, and then I got this other box, which I don't have a key for. And I joked with her, we were chatting back in line. I said, well, it could be full of gold coins, of course, but yeah. And I made her a deal that I'll pay the postage. She'll mail me these. And if there was gold coins, I'd give her half of it. I'll keep it all. So I got it home, took a screwdriver, popped it open, and it's another 6 reels of this stuff, and then an empty film reel. But I mean, the boxes are rusted as hell. The reels look pretty good. I haven't screened any of them yet. That's my plan for this week, is to get some of those ready. But it's very nice. I had some Super 8 films that I didn't want that, again, I'll put up there and say for anybody want these for postage only. And rather than just taking them into Goodwill or God forbid tossing them out, it's nice. So if anybody is into Super 8 films, just suggest you look at some of the groups there on Facebook, and there is like I said, people will show that they'll take out their projector, set it up, and show. I mean, sometimes the films are in ghastly shape, but it's still fun. And then every now and then you'll see one and go, oh God, I remember seeing when one of the ones I just gave away. I had duplicates of. It was a Howdy Doody film that we must have wore the sprocket holes off. Where Clarabelle, their TV set, it blew out, and Clarabelle says, "Oh, the black tube or the green tube or whatever blew out. And I'll put this black tube in, and it sucks him through the TV, and he goes in this really weird clown circus world and everything." And you can find it on YouTube. I mean, I remember when I first got the thing and put it up on the reel, all of a sudden I was sitting back at 1482 East 53rd Street, Brooklyn, New York, watching the film again. It was, so for me, great trip back through time, and I appreciate folks sitting here and going back in time with me.
We appreciate it.
No
Thank you
problem.
so
So I hope,
much.
Great show, Bill.
yeah, and I
Thank
thought,
you.
Kendall, I thought you'd enjoy the horse.
I did. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
I had two Super 8 sound films that I did, and one of them was Pinocchio with Monster of the Whale. And I said, which of the two am I going to finish and synchronize the sound up? I'll go do the horses. So,
Oh, thank you.
on the list.
I appreciate it. I'm glad I was able to come.
Well, again, it's a super film. Robert Taylor, Lily Palmer, and again, you just a very young Jane Franciscus and Eddie Albert. I have to show that part to Carol because she just dropped off. We watched Green Acres, and Eddie Albert is just so great in that. But here's a very stern crew cut major. We don't have time for horses. So great stuff.
That's a good movie. It's historically accurate too, I believe.
Yeah.
Disney, when he did a war scene, he wanted to make it as realistic as possible. So evidently in that one war scene, he really researched it out and did it as close to history as he could.
Yeah. Watching it, because the scene we saw today was the finale of the film. I was watching and think how they would never, ever, ever be able to make a movie like that today, because there's no, what CGI would you put in it or anything? But today the whole pace and everything is so different, and was really nice that these things still live on from the 60s. Mail call. I must go.
Okay, it was great to
Guys, next
see you,
week.
Bill. Have a good week.
All right, bye.